No, I want to say I was a huge fan of Orphan when it came out. I saw it on opening night. It's really cool to meet you,
Oh,
actually.
cool. Awesome.
Specifically, wanted to do this interview because I remembered you from Orphan. I gotta be honest. Yeah.
It was so long ago. It's so crazy. So crazy.
Yeah, it was such a cool movie, Really sticks in
Yeah.
your head.
Well, part two coming
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I saw on Deadline you'll be back. So I want to start off asking about a part towards the end of the movie when the father blames himself for the book Mary read. And it's almost like he has this viewpoint from, is it nature or nurture? He blames himself for nurturing like some kind of thoughts inside Mary's head, but obviously they have a different viewpoint of that. So I was wondering your take on that whole idea, which is actually a much bigger idea if you think about it.
There's a lot of really big questions in this movie, actually. But yeah, that moment you mentioned, I think a big part of it. So let me think about this. So I guess a big part of the movie is silence, right? And how that's kind of what's killing them is this lack of communication and all of this stuff, and kind of their take on what God is and how it's all of these rules and it has to be a certain way. I guess he's starting to question it there, and they're taught not to question things, and that's why we are so in the film, I guess, always in trouble and being punished is because they kind of go outside the norm, or they do question things and what is God, what is good, you know, and why would God create something not good if it's all? Well, what was the line? It was something like, wouldn't God create bad, or how would you know what God exists if there wasn't the other thing? I don't know. There's a lot of questions in the movie, I guess, but I guess that is a big part of it, is he's starting to question right there, question his own thoughts and beliefs, which I guess then he feels guilt and shame about doing, so he kind of tightens the grip even more.
I think it's also, when you live in an environment where everything's so structured and rigid, if you have, a kid, for example, like Mary, who starts to kind of like bridge out from what the approved norm or narrative in the family is, he's trying to figure out where that could have come from. And he blames himself because he almost feels as if he planted that seed inside of her of curiosity through that book, which in a sense could be true or could not be true. I mean, I feel like you kind of come into the story where we've already had a relationship. You're entering as an audience member partway through, but I always felt like, Eleanor and Mary's love comes from such a deep place where it's like they feel the safest, the most appreciated, the most cared for, the happiest when they're together. And that's where they feel free. And that to them is how they define their view on what God is. And Eduardo even said that when I met with him originally, is that to him, he grew up very religious family, and that, he always kind of questioned what is it exactly that we could define as God, and that to him, God is love. So Mary and Eleanor's love is an act of God in and of itself, but it's not necessarily within this world in this time. It's not what they believe God is. To them, God is like what Stefanie said, a set of rules, a set of tenets you must follow. And I guess in a sense, it's like, I guess what you believe is your reality. And two completely different, storylines just kind of branch out, and that's what causes the tension that causes this family to fall apart.
I thought bread was a really big aspect of the movie because, there's all these references to peasantry basically in the chapters. And even though initially it seems that only the guy who helps Eleanor and Mary wants the bread, it seems consistent. Like even at that final dinner table scene, everybody like launches at the bread. So even though they have such a big house, does it pretty much mean it was kind of still a family of peasantry or not of means, or in your opinion?
Well, Eduardo, like part of the house, I think the reason they selected the one that they did was because it was an authentic house. Like that house was not built by, a company. It was built by people who built that house years and years and years ago, during that time period. And so it's like this family takes very like takes a lot of pride in their home, takes a lot of pride in their family, takes a lot of pride in what they have. But at the same time, it's like, you know, everything in this house slightly is falling apart on the outside too, which was something that they chose not to like refurbish things in it and like fix some of the stuff that was broken. Was the idea is that this house has been in this family. This matriarch has this family, right? And like everything within and outside of this house is like kind of falling apart, but they're so stuck inside of it. And, you know, this is like what they have, almost that, you know, those luxuries like bread, for example, become this sort of like, you know, like they say gluttonous, like this treat that they get to kind of share in. And that's something that they very rarely allow themselves to do because it goes against what they, you know, believe is the right way to act. So pride as a theme was interesting in the movie. I feel like, you know, in my opinion, I don't think Eleanor has any sort of pride. You know, I feel like she's had that
Really
stripped down. I feel like she's had that completely stripped down, like especially by the end, towards the end of the film. And I think that her and Mary's like plan to kind of get out is what kind of gives her the hope that she'll be able to get that back for herself. Because I think that it is really horrible to live in those conditions and to literally be just like, you know, you just work constantly. And it's not like anything is easy back then. Like everything takes time to wash clothes, takes time to bake bread, takes time to do all of these things, and everything has to be done to their liking, to their specific needs. And it's like, you're just there for the family essentially.
There was a little detail right at the beginning of the movie I liked where Mary seems like she's about to go for a kiss, but then she just puts her head down on her shoulder. And I was wondering if that was improvised because it's such like a gentle, subtle thing, or if that was written in the script.
It was in the script, but that everything in the movie is very subtle and intentional. And I think that's just true to Eduardo for really having such an amazing vision and knowing every moment counts and means something. And yeah, that was totally planned by him.
It's also easy just to have a kiss, you know, it's fun to like, I feel like, you know, their love is so tender and beautiful and almost like careful because they have to be.
Well, they've never probably kissed anybody before.
That was something we talked about too, is that kiss in the chicken coop is probably like, you know, the first time that they've ever done that.
Was the rice torture based on something real where they put their knees on that? Because I'd never really seen a torture like that before this movie.
It's a real punishment that people went through. I mean, thank goodness not anymore, but I know people who grew up in orphanages and convents and stuff, and that's kind of the name of the game, you know.
Eduardo had a specific reference from it, you know, that he either read or he said that he read about maybe
kneeling on beans.
Beans, that's what it was. Yeah.
That whole chicken coop scene, you know, what was it like interacting with the chickens for you, Eleanor?
Well, it was smelly for sure. I love animals. See, the thing is, I loved the live chickens. I was like so happy to get in there and like do my chicken impression and hang out with them. And
I saw you petted one.
What?
I saw you petted one like the moment.
I love animals. I mean, I had such a great time with the chickens. It was when we had the dead chickens.
That was horrible.
That was when it was horrible because they smelled, because they had to be boiled so that way I could pluck them.
Yeah.
And I don't know what, it wasn't like they were just, I mean, they put something I think on them so that way they would like last for the whole day, but like can't have like semi-cooked raw meat.
They were
hanging out. Everywhere. It was so gross. Yeah. So I liked the live chickens. I was like totally there for that. Those were fun times with the girls, you know. But the dead ones, not so much.
It's pretty smelly.
That scene with Rory, was that supposed to imply that he raped her? Because I couldn't really tell if he was just kind of what exactly he was doing because it cut away so quick. But
yeah, no, that was what was meant to be implied.
What was it like shooting that scene? Because for me, I think it's one of the strongest scenes in the movie, especially because he has that speech about, you know, how they wanted to burn his face with a candle. And you almost take it at first that he's like them, that he's another kind of like tortured soul, but then it kind of reverses on Eleanor altogether. So
yeah, it's kind of this, what Eduardo and I talked about this scene a lot, and it was a lot of like just because you think you can identify with somebody, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're on your side or that they have your back. Everybody has their own intentions and their own kind of goals in their life and their own thing that they're kind of dealing with. And so when Rory came in too, like he only worked for a day. He came in on that just to do that scene and the scenes that he had in the film. And we really like, you know, we didn't have much time to talk about it, but he's such a fantastic actor and had such a cool idea of what he wanted to do with that scene that we just sat down and kind of hashed it out with Eduardo and talked about it. And then really it felt like such a great kind of back and forth sort of tennis match. And I thought that was something, like you said, interesting to play with, is this idea that like, okay, she feels in a sense like this person comes in and maybe that they can connect. Maybe he understands where she is, where her and Mary are, but it diverges like very quickly. And I think that there's something to be said too about, you know, who you put your trust in and why you trust certain people, and you know, we're not all good and we're not all bad. We're just human at the end of the day.
This is kind of a spoiler note, but for Mary, I was really surprised she let her brother drink the tea, because after they did the switch, it's like a natural inclination to believe that she's gonna jump, be like, "Don't drink the tea, don't do it." But she didn't. She let him go through with it. So, what do you think about that?
I know it's kind of a really big moment, I guess, but I can't. I don't know. it's intense, and it's like she has a plan and she follows through with it, and that kind of goes through the same thing. Not all people are good or bad. It's kind of all of the above and a big mix of it, and how all of these people are kind of projecting all of their pain onto others. You know, her parents, they put Eleanor and Mary through hell when they're the ones who are preaching about God and heaven and all of this stuff. It's interesting. And yeah, she lets it happen. I think a lot of people, we don't know why they do certain things, you know, in the moment. She freezes and she can't do anything about it. But
it's also like what you're willing to do for what you want or what you need. And like to live in a place where Mary and Eleanor are in such hell, it's like you're almost faced with this like question where it is a split second decision of like, do I save my brother or do I save myself?
Yeah.
And I think those, you know, that's what I loved about Eduardo's writing in this movie, is that you really kind of dance between what you think about these people. I mean, I think you kind of have a general idea that you know that the family, there's something off in this family, and you really are rooting for Eleanor and Mary, but at the same time, it's like these are not all, you know, we're not all good. You know what we do at the end of the film is not necessarily a good thing. Like, is it an act of God or is it an act of the devil? Like, I think that's like there are a lot of questions in this movie, and I think that's one of them. Is like,
and are they the same thing?
Why did you choose to take these roles? What did they mean to you initially when you read the script? What spoke to you about it?
The script was awesome. I mean, the whole story was completely planned and thought out. None of it was in order, and I was just so impressed by the script. And when I met Eduardo, his vision was epic, and I really felt like I connected with him, and I wanted to work with him. And that's really as simple as it was for me. He was awesome. The script was awesome, and I knew he was going to do something amazing with it. And I know he has such an amazing future ahead of him with all of his future films. So I wanted to be part of that.
I got an email and they told me Stefanie was going to be in the movie, and I wanted to work with Stefanie again because I love her. And
we've been friends for a very long time.
Yeah.
BFF.
And, yeah. And so I read the script and I talked to Eduardo, and I was really floored by how specific his vision was. He really, you know, when you're selecting what kind of projects you want to work on, a lot of it is, you know, it's like, you know, making movies sometimes feels like it's like dating, you know, it's like you have an idea and you hope that the person you meet has the same idea. So it's really cool when you connect and click and you're like, okay, we both want to make the same story. We want to tell it the same way. And so, you know, it was super easy. And then I also love the idea of doing a movie where I didn't speak for much of it. I mean, that's a really cool challenge as an actor, to just be able to be present with you know, someone as talented as Stefanie and show up every day and really kind of live in that space. And I had never done that before. And it's rare to read a script where somebody doesn't speak very much. And silence was such a huge theme in the whole story and script. The silence of the family not being able to communicate with each other, the silence in this like world, the quiet silence of like the time period as it is, and then the silence that these girls are kind of forced to be to have about their relationship and about how much they love each other because of where they are. And then Eleanor literally has her voice taken from her.
Yeah, that was going to be my final question, actually. How did it feel to adapt to essentially playing a mute as an actress? And that like last really scene with Rory, it almost seems like you've become as vulnerable as humanly possible at that point. I mean, you're on your knees a scene later, or right before, I should say.
Yeah.
Or is it a scene later? Anyway, yeah.
No, it's a really vulnerable place to be. And I mean, I think those scenes is like, as much as, we had a great time making this movie. I mean, it is a really strange thing to be like, when you think about it, kneeling on rice around an entire room full of people in like your undergarments. And like, that's, those were some of the scenes that we had to film, but that just kind of added to the like horror that these girls are going through. And like what Stefanie just said, it's like, this family is creating hell for these young women on earth in order to hopefully save them from hell in the afterlife so they can go to heaven. And it is a sort of like interesting switch to play out where it's like, or they could just, not create this like horrible environment for them while they're living in this world and let God take care of the rest. But it is really like what people believe and how people will force their beliefs on others sometimes.